and salute those ancestors that died in the great Maya Alpha. And at this time, in your own special way, you may call forth the ancestors' names of which you wish to give homage, of which you pay respect for the being and the bringing of you into creation that are connected to your bloodline, of which we say Ashe. 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 Such as Marcus Garvey. Harriet Tubman, and so forth and so on, of which we say Ashe.
Sure.
We salute and pay homage to those ancestors whose names have not been mentioned, of which we say Ashe.
Sure.
We give honor and pay homage to those ancestors who have been extinguished in the youth of their existence, which we give thanks. We pay homage to those ancestors to whom we know returning to us in another life form as maybe a child that may come into your experience, of which are bringing an experience to share with you as you share your experience with them, of which we say Ashe.
Sure.
Those are the ancestors not yet. We say Ashe.
Yeah.
Pay homage and thanks again to the source of creation. But we need is of which we say Ashe.
Sure.
Because all things are cyclic. And as we recognize and understand energy, we are into energy. Ashe. Is now complete. May the vibration of love continue with us. As Ashe.
All right.
We have been believers by Margaret Walker. We have been believers, believing in the blood gods of an old land, believing in the secrets of the seers and the magic of the charmer and the power of the devil's evil ones. And in the white gods of a new land, we have been believers, believing in the mercy of our masters and the beauty of our brothers, believing in the conjure of the humble and the faithful and the pure. Neither the slaver's whip, nor the lynch's rope, nor the bayonet could kill our black belief. In our hunger, we beheld the welcome table, and in our nakedness, the glory of a long white robe. We have been believers in the New Jerusalem. We have been believers feeding greedy green gods like a Moloch, demanding our sons and our daughters, our strength and our wills and our spirits to pain. We have been believers, silent, solid, stubborn and strong. We have been believers yielding substance for the world. With our hands have we fed a people, and out of our strength have they wronged the necessities of a nation. Our song has filled the twilight, and our hope has heralded the dawn. Now we steady for the touch of one unseen power. Margaret Walker, we have been believers.
Habari Gani. Habari Gani. What an incredible year that we have all overcome, that we have marvelously accomplished, connected, grown in ways expected and unexpected. Kwanzaa and the principles, the 7 principles that we use as the code of ethics, guide the footsteps of our lives each year, is 365 days. And this week, this period, is the time that we use to rejuvenate in that code of ethics, to celebrate that code of ethics with the First Fruits Festival here in the diaspora. I'm so excited. My name is Kim Poole. I'm a teaching artist with the Teaching Artists Institute. And today we bring you an entire agenda of celebration. We're talking about what it means to live and create a culture within a culture here in the diaspora. The institution of culture for the diasporian means to design a world that you survive in. Kwanzaa is one of the tools that we use to reaffirm our African identity, whatever that looks like to us. And today in our lineup, we have all the way from Liberia, Invasiki Kong, gonna talk with us from the Mandingo people about what it looks like to include and consider Liberia in our conversations as we re-Africanize ourselves. We give thanks to Brother King, our spiritual compass here in Baltimore, opening our ceremony and providing that libration, bringing our ancestors back into this space, recognizing that even though those before us have transitioned in the African worldview, you do not die until you are forgotten. How could we ever forget Sharon Ellaby, Anthony Kaiser, Naaman Poole, Dorothy Pettaway? I hope that this time encourages you to say the name of your ancestor, that you may bring them into this year's Kwanzaa celebration. This is family's Kwanzaa celebration. You know, here we do a virtual celebration, but it was supposed to be in person. But the COVID-19 pandemic kept us from gathering in person, but it didn't keep us from connecting. And here we are. We have with us all the way from Ohio, and very soon going tomorrow to Benin in West Africa, Mama Ade. She's gonna lead a poem. We have with us Mr. Rufus T. Stevenson out of Washington, D.C. by way of Noonan, Georgia. Country boy from a dirt road here to show us how it's done. Of course, we also have on our agenda tonight Baba Hannibal L. He's going to do the African pledge for us. We also have Baba Haki Ami teaching us that business matters. And it is in our financial unity that we will build the institutions we need for our collective sustainability. And so much more. I'm going to invite to the mic Mama Ade Olomo. Mama Ade.
I want you to know my feel. I want you to know when you left me here in Africa, when one day after the sunset, in the middle of a satisfaction, joyous, after good harvest, they came and took you away from me. That very day, they took my love away from me. They took my soul away from me, broke my heart, confused my spirit. And I want you to know how I cry. Oh, I cry, all my tears to blood. How I use all my strength to death. How I implore all my spiritual power. But that day, the gods were not with me. Today I turn to God and I ask to bring you back. I don't yet know when or how, but all I know is the Spirit watching you dance, African dance, searching your heritage through the drums, which is the voice of your ancestors. Then I know you have come back. You are the ones keeping our culture alive. And all I can say is, welcome. Welcome home, my child. Welcome back to Africa. Ashe. Ashe.
At this time, we're going to introduce our keynote speaker for the night, Mr. Nvasiki Khan, to tell us why Liberia matters to the African American experience. 200 years ago, Liberia was birthed out of the African American journey, the repatriation, the return trip back to Liberia. Nvasiki is going to tell us why that trip is just as important today. Nvasiki.
Is he muted? He's muted. He's muted. Can you unmute him?
Hello to everyone. Greetings to you from here in Pennsylvania.
He's unmuted.
This is Vasiki Kone. I'm a Liberian writer, and it's a great opportunity for me to be here tonight celebrating Kwanzaa with you guys. You know, as we celebrate Kwanzaa night, it takes my mind back more than 25 years ago. Before I came to America, there was an African American professor that was visiting Liberia, and we listened to his lecture. He said, in the African American experience, there's always been two currents, either integration or nationalism. When things were very difficult for Black people, they yearned to form another nation where they could feel equal. But then when things were good, they yearned for an opportunity to integrate into the American society. And out of that desire for a nation where they feel liberated every other way, came the idea of Liberia. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Liberia and know about Liberia. So what we're going to talk about today is just something that we add on to what you already know. I come across a lot of people here in America, and when I mention Liberia, many of them will say, I've not heard about it. And I've always said, how can you forget about Liberia? Which is definitely a part of the African American experience. Liberia is a child that was born out of African American experience. Because many years ago, there was a lot of people, white people specifically, who believed that Black people could not coexist with them in America. So out of that desire for a separate nation for Black people, Liberia came into being. It was just about 200 years ago, some men and women who were free from slavery in America decided to make a journey to a new place, back to their ancestral homeland in West Africa. They first started in Sierra Leone, but they continued the journey downward, what became Liberia. That happened in 1822. So in 2022, it is 200 years since that journey started. And I've always believed that wherever African American history is taught, Liberian history should be part of that teaching, because Liberian history is an African American history. Liberia was founded mainly by the American Colonization Society, which was supported by some of the people that were some were abolitionists, and I believe some were racist. Some had some malice towards Black people, and they wanted them to leave. However, whatever the situation is, we have a nation that we have today. And that nation is one way or the other connected to all of you guys here in America. It is a unique country in West Africa. I guess the only one of its kind, maybe the only country that can be compared to Liberia in West Africa is Ghana. No, not Ghana, Sierra Leone. Because Sierra Leone was also the place where the British settled some of their free slaves from the British area like Canada and other places. So those that left from here in America, the first place they actually wanted to settle was Sierra Leone, but for some reason, they decided to push down further to what became Liberia. All right. And there was a lot of people that contributed to this effort. One of them was Paul Coffey. As you understand, he was, by that time, one of the richest Black person in America. And he was a strong advocate for the abolition of slavery. And he helped to purchase the freedom of many Black people that want to migrate to Liberia. Today, the Black people settled in Liberia. They formed many settlements that were named after places they left from in America. So as a result, we have Maryland in Liberia. We had Mississippi. Mississippi was a separate colony organized by the Mississippi Colonization Society, which were different from American Colonization Society, which from Liberia. But in 1842, Mississippi decided to join Liberia to form one nation. But today, Mississippi is no longer existing by that name. It is now called Sano County. But Maryland, interestingly, is still existing as a county in Liberia. It is in the southeastern region of the country. All right. And Liberia's capital city was named or is named after the 5th president of America, President James Monroe. In the wake of George Floyd's murder in Minnesota, which caused a lot of demonstrations around the world, here, including here in America, there has been a lot of debates within the intellectual community in Liberia and outside of Liberia that the name Monrovia should be changed because by the time Black Americans arrived in African American arrived in Liberia, the place which called Monrovia today was locally called Duco. There has been some debate in the Liberian intellectual community that because James Monroe was safe horse, a good one indeed, the capital of Liberia should not be named after him. But there are a lot of people who are holding on to that name. As I say, for some Liberian of American Liberian origin, when we say or talk about changing Monroe's name to Duco, some of them feel like it is an attack on the heritage of African Americans who went to Liberia. But I believe that if James Monroe was a slaveholder and he was not a good person to black people for that matter, it is not a good thing for the capital of Liberia to continue to be named after James Monroe. And it is very befitting for the name change to reflect the original name of the place before it became Monrovia. All right. Now, it is quite interesting to know that Liberia has had more than 20 presidents. But you will be amazed to know that more than 7, or let's say about 10 of those presidents were actually born in America. The first president was Joseph Jenkins Robert. He was born in Norfolk, Virginia. As I went through the list yesterday, which I emailed to Ken, you realize that of all these presidents, 3 of the former presidents came from Maryland state, the state of Maryland in America. 3 came from Virginia. 2 came from Kentucky. 1 came from South Carolina. So I may go ahead to name some of those people who were born in America, migrated to Liberia, and ended up becoming president of the country. All right. Now, the list here is for Liberian presidents born in Virginia. In Virginia, the list includes Joseph Jenkins Roberts, James Payne, and Anthony William Garner. These were 3 presidents that were born in Virginia, and they migrated to Liberia and aspired for the leadership of the country, and they became president. There are also 3 names here of people born in Maryland County, Maryland State, the state of Maryland. I'm confusing Maryland County with the state of Maryland in America. Okay, but these are the names of presidents that were born in the state of Maryland that became president in Liberia. One of them is Stephen Allen Benson. He was elected president from 1856 to 1854 to 1856. We had Daniel B. Warner, president from 1864 to 1868. Garrison Coleman, 1900 to 1904. Now here are presidents, 2 presidents that were born in Kentucky. One of them is called Alfred Francis Russell. Another one is called William Coleman. These are 2 Liberian presidents that were born in Kentucky. Then we also have Edward J. Rohr. He was born in Ohio. And we have James Smith, was born in South Carolina. Then we also have Arthur Barkley, who was born in Barbados, West Indies. So you see that Liberia as a nation is heavily influenced by African American culture. I say it president to be born in Liberia was Hillary Richie Wright, the first Liberian president to be born in the country, and that happened from Hebrew from 1884 to 1894. So other presidents that followed that, even though they were born in Liberia, but were born in American Liberian from the American Liberian heritage. Those include William Tubman, the longest serving president of Liberia. Also, William Tubman family came from Georgia. William Tubman, the last American Liberian president to be assassinated in Liberia in 1980, his family also came from Georgia. So, given that history, that the very presidential history of Liberia, you realize that many of the presidents were born here in America. And they went to Liberia with the hope that they could create a nation where could be liberated. But one thing that we have to understand as a matter of history, the relationship between the Liberians have not always been cordial. The relationship was such that Liberians, given their political domination and economic domination of the country, felt a sense of superiority over the native Africans they met there. And that became a source of contention between the two groups. So before the 1980 coup, many native Liberians and agitated for change. Some of the people of American Liberian heritage who were part of the advocacy for change include Dr. Amos Sawyer, includes Gabriel Bacchus Matthew. There's a lot of other progressives, the late Clifford Flemster. These were all people of American Liberian descent who also joined the native Liberian to demand change. So the change came in 1980. It was that because the president, William Tubman, was assassinated. But in later years, many people have come to realize that William Tubman indeed was a progressive leader. He realized that there was a need for change. But unfortunately, he became a casualty of the change. Before we even come to William Tubman, one man that I'm sure all of you would know is Wilmer Bladden. Wilmer Bladden was a strong Pan-Africanist, and some people even consider him to be the father of Pan-Africanism, because it is through his writing from Liberia back in those days that the entire world were informed and educated about a lot of things about Africa. So because strong advocacy for Black liberation in the way of Pan-Africanism, he is considered to be the with the hope of taking Black people out of here to Africa. Interestingly, indeed, Liberia was to be the place where Garvey intended to carry on his mission. But two things affected African people. After the transatlantic slave trade, the next phase of the European nation was the colonization, whereby all parts of Africa were divided among various European countries, more especially the British and French. And Liberia, as a small nation back then, very powerless nation, was surrounded by the French in Guinea, in Ivory Coast, in Sierra Leone. So Marcus Garvey's decision to carry on the repatriation of Black people en masse into Liberia was seen as a threat by the French and the British. And they did all within their power to make sure that Marcus Garvey movement was not going to succeed. And the president of Liberia at the time was Charles King, who having promised Gabi all the land and things in Liberia, they all reneged on the promise because of fear that if he was allowed Gabi into Liberia, the British and the French might have used that as a pretext to colonize Liberia. I think that was their reason for reneging on the promise made to Marcus Garvey. However, we have to still understand and appreciate Marcus Garvey for standing up tall for Black people. So Liberia, whatever the situation is, whether negative or positive, Liberia is there today, 200 years later. And it is the nation which all of us, Africans and African Americans, can boast of as being part of its creation. One thing we also have to understand is that the African Americans were the very champions for African liberation. Because before movement was born in Africa to seek for independence from the European, the struggle was started right here among you people. So if we go back to the Harlem Renaissance, read the poems of Claude Marquet, read the poem of Langston Hughes, read the poem of the Harlem Renaissance writers and poets, you see how much they celebrate Africa. And after that period, we look into the 60s and see how Malcolm X tried as much as possible to connect the struggle here in America and the anti-colonial struggle in Africa, to reaffirm Garvey's mission one way or the other. So the struggle is the same for us today as it was yesterday. Together, I believe we all need liberation. I've often said that for Black people anywhere in the world, whether in America or anywhere in the world for the matter, as long as Africa is not truly liberated, we are not going to be respected by any other race. All other races determine their view of Africans or Black people based on what they think of Africa. Because Africa has been presented to justify colonization. So African people have fought so many ways, intellectually, politically, every other way, to free themselves of all the labels, negative labels that are being put on Africa, people who don't like African people. So whether we're here in America, wherever we are, our true goal for us to be able to gain the respect and the recognition we expect as a people, as a human being, Africa has to be liberated. And I think founding Liberia was just direction as it became the inspiration for Marcus Garvey and his movement. So it is great to talk to you today about Liberia. I know there's many speakers and I've spoken long enough, so I just pause here to give opportunity to other people to talk. But I believe whatever we say here today will inspire some of you to do a little more research on Liberia, to have much more in-depth understanding of the formation of Liberia, and to understand and appreciate your connection to that land. Thank you and God bless.
Yes, Brother Mbasiki, we are clapping with you all over the world. Liberia is an example. But before we move on to our next person, I'm really big on engagement. So many times we see a European style of education. I'm a lecturer, I have all the answers, I stand up front, I tell you what you need to learn, I tell you what you need to know, and then you take as many notes as possible. But African people and African-centered people understand that education and knowledge is visceral. What does that mean? It means it's just like a fan in the ceiling. It's just like sandpaper back and forth. It's back and forth. It's you and me. It's us. It's synergy. We come to conclusions collectively together. And so I want to open the mic. Most importantly, I want to open the mic to my own family. You know, I do public events with the Teaching Artists Institute all over the world in 7 countries. Mama Ade, Baba Habibi, Baba Rufus T. Stevenson, even you in Basiki, in a week you leave to Liberia and you'll be there in person. So this is just another event for you. But my family only gets this knowledge every 2 years for our biannual Kwanzaa celebration. So I would be remiss not to bring them onto the camera along with my community family to ask some questions, because you raised a lot of great points. You know, we usually in the diaspora, we look to Ghana for our cultural realignment. Over 7,000 African Americans repatriated to Ghana, and they live there now permanently. They made millions of dollars in Ghana in the year of 2019 during the year of return, when the Ghanaian president, Coffey got on stage in Washington, D.C. and said, guess what? This is the year of return, and I want all of the African Americans to come back home to Ghana. So if Liberia is a product of the African American experience, why is it that we're not rushing to the Liberian year of return? And it's because of our troubled history. Being enslaved here, being colonized on the continent, we brought our trauma with us. We have issues and we have a lot of healing. And being colonized in your own house is one thing when somebody pick you up, steal you from your house, bring you to somewhere else, and you can always romanticize about what things would have been like had you just been able to stay home, if you still spoke your original language, if you still knew how to prepare your original foods. It's a whole nother issue when somebody come into your house and tell you what to eat, come into your house and tell you your language ain't good enough, come into your house and tell you your education system is subpar, change your history, change your books, change your culture. So we have so many issues on both sides of the pond. And so the question is, how do we begin the healing the second time around if we choose Liberia as the next exodus for African Americans to establish a home and repatriate? And the question is, how do we build those same communities here in U.S. soil? You don't know what it means for you to be my friend here in America. You living in Philadelphia, me down the street in Baltimore, because we're not just talking about building liberated zones on the continent of Africa to reclaim our African sovereignty. We're also talking about right here in America. Not everybody's going back to Liberia. Some people are going to stay right here. And so I want the Liberians in the U.S. to embrace the historic Africans that didn't come here by choice, that were stolen during the Ma'afa. I want the Liberians right here in America to come onto Kwanzaa celebrations across this week and to talk about Liberian history, to talk about our connections and how we can heal. So I want to open the floor to questions so that we can think about a few real solutions. We probably only have time for about 2 or 3, but I want to give that opportunity. So if you can just at this time raise your hand inside the WhatsApp group chat, or is this WhatsApp? No, this is Zoom. We're doing too much international communication. Inside the Zoom chat, I want to just have you push the raise hand button. Now for the family back at home, I know you guys don't use Zoom as often. So if you don't have a raise hand button or you can't find that, you can simply unmute your microphone and we'll call you one by one. There has to be some questions out there, family. Don't be shy. Community family, blood family, it's all the same. Let's ask some questions. Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's talk about the unspoken tensions between Africans in the historic diaspora and the new migrants from the continent that still understand which geographic location they come from. Let's talk about how we're bound. Let's talk about how our liberation is indivisible, how we need each other for our liberation. Somebody has a question.
They can go to reactions and click raise hand. Reactions.
Raise hand, reactions.
On reactions.
Who is it?
I don't see anybody yet.
Y'all don't make me volunteer you now.
I don't see anybody.
Let me see.
I don't see anybody.
Who do I see
unmuted.
out there
Mama Rashida?
today?
Oh, no.
I'm not able to see where raised hand is, but
Hold on. Go ahead.
I'll just interject real quick.
Go ahead, King.
There's Monrovia and Maryland on the Liberia map, and I never even knew they were there. Do you have more information in regards to how Maryland became a state here as well as over there?
Well, we talk about American colonization society that gave birth to Liberia. But then besides the American colonization society, there were two different organizations, Maryland Colonization Society and Mississippi Colonization Society. So Maryland was acquired as a separate land, but that organization in Mississippi was acquired as a separate land by the Mississippi Colonization Society. But later on, there were a lot of problems between the settlers in Maryland County and the indigenous African. Later on, Maryland decided to join Liberia as part of the Liberian nation. Same thing with Mississippi. Both of them later on joined Liberia as a nation. So, but today, Mississippi does not exist by that name. The county is called Salo County. Maryland is still existing as a county in the southeastern region in Liberia. It is next door to what used to be Mississippi in Liberia. Then Monrovia is the capital city, which is named after President James Monroe. But in the wake, as I said earlier, in the wake of the the killing of George Floyd, which caused a lot of demonstrations around the world, there has been renewed debate within the Liberian community that Liberia as a nation does not deserve the name of Monrovia. It should go back to an original African name, which is Duko. I'm part of that campaign. We are basically campaigning to change the name from Monrovia to Duko, which reflects its African originality.
Thank you. I hope that, Baba King, I hope that answered your question. It looks like we have
I do appreciate it.
Yes, Baba King, always.
So, I guess I wanted to say thank you much. Yeah, I wanted to say thank you very much, Baba, for just sharing what you shared about Liberia this evening. But also, I know that what slavery did for us here in the U.S., colonization there in Liberia, and because we're all still struggling with the casualties of being at war with Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
The physical war, psychological war, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yes, so some of the same issues, particularly that our young people are dealing with in terms of holding on to their culture and how we pass the culture on to the next generation, information about Pan-Africanism and what's going on around the world. What kinds of, are there organizations and other, just entities in place, whether rites of passage or something that will help the young people to, hold on to their culture too, as we're grappling with, everybody now, nobody wants to be Bush. Everybody want to go to Europe and want to go to London and England and France and, so tell me about that. What's happening?
Well, I would say that while there is so much effort on the part of young Africans to travel to America and Europe, the consciousness of Africanness is still there.
Yes.
It is how came and not connected.
Yes.
Of course, everybody may not be that conscious of their culture, of their tradition, but there are a lot of people that are strong enough. And to me, Kim is a very great example. Yes. Kim has been to so many African countries than me. Yeah. All right, I was born in Liberia. Besides Liberia, I've been to Ivory Coast, Guinea, I have been to Ghana, Nigeria. I've been to Sierra Leone. I can only count 5 countries in Africa that I have visited. But Kim right here has been to almost many parts of Africa.
Sure.
So she is a quintessential Pan-Africanist. You know, as Malcolm X traveled to so many parts of Africa, I see Kim in the same way. So those of us that can engage with each other, we have to continue to build a bridge. You know, I just did an academic paper on the African American and Native African experience in America, because there's a lot of negative belief or negative views we have of each other. For some of us that have engaged on both sides, I'm a Native African, but I've engaged with African Americans throughout my stays in America, more especially when I used to be in the U.S. Navy, where I served for 9 years. I engaged a lot of African Americans through that. But my paper I just did for my last semester, it was basically talking about how we see each other. Africans in America, African American in America, and Native African in America. How do we see each other? With all the negative things. The way I say it is like, if we reflect on the history of Margaret, we reflect on the history of the Pan-African movement, that the real liberation of Africa from European colonialism was birthed among Black people in America. That is a fact. If you look at the first Pan-African Congress in 1900 and subsequent ones, it was headed by people like W.E. Du Bois and a lot of other intellectuals from both the Caribbean and United States of America. Then you look at how the Harlem Renaissance influenced the negritude movement of students in Europe from Africa and the Caribbean. Where you talk about M.S. Césaire, you talk about Leopold Senghor. All of these people came together to launch a struggle to free Africa. So, but though many Africans today in America are not aware of that history, but those of us who are aware of the history, we have to tell them that there's no way you can separate we from Africa from our African American brothers and sisters over here. It's
Absolutely.
always the same.
Yes, I thoroughly agree with you. I mean, I think we do. And I guess my question was, and maybe that's a question that's just I get, maybe you said the answer in a way that we do have to come together so we can begin a dialogue and begin to do the work of really coming together, because there is history that, you know, and even with us traveling to Tanzania, so many times, just like here in the U.S., our people do not know all of the history, right?
Yes.
Learning it. It's the same in Liberia, I'm sure. You know, you live in the culture, but do you know, knowing the history of what happened and how we are, you know, coming together and how we can pass that on to the next generation coming behind us is very important, I think. So I guess I was asking, were there some organizations, or that's something that we all here need to get started? I don't know, but to bridge the gap so that we can start coming together more, so that we can, particularly with the young people, so they can know our connection, that we can build on this, you know?
Okay.
Absolutely.
I understand. So in terms of organization, I'm part of an organization called SEWA, which Kim is aware of. It is through SEWA that I got to know Kim. And SEWA is interested in building the bridge between Africans in the diaspora and the Africans in Liberia.
Great.
SRDC, I'm sure some of you are aware of it or maybe member of it. SRDC just concluded a summit in Liberia. The first time for one of its summit to be held outside of America. And one of the projects SRDC is supporting in Liberia is to build National Library. A library that will have books to educate people on both sides about how we are one people in the struggle for liberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you because it's nice to understand that we have the same solutions all over the world. Re-Africanizing ourselves, understanding how we're connected, using books and reading. I mean, the illiteracy rate in Baltimore City and the illiteracy rate in Liberia, I mean, they're neck and neck, and we have access to libraries here. And so the question is, what is the real problem? And sometimes we all say that we know the problem, but the question is, how creative can we be about the solutions? Most importantly, whatever solution we create, we're going to need the financial unity to sustain that solution. In our organization, the Teaching Artists Institute, we say that culture is the new currency. But we need to understand that we still live in capitalistic societies. And so we need our culture and we need financial capital. We don't have the luxury of choosing one or the other. We need both. And at this time, I want to invite Baba Haki Ami to talk to us a little bit about financial unity that's needed in our global Black community.
Thank you. Yes, so Abagani, thank you all for being here today. I mean, first, I thank Mama Rashida for just chiming in there, as well as you, Brother King. You've always been there for us. But let me shout out a few people that I see. Sister CJ, my TT, Tati, I'm sorry, I put on my glasses intentionally. Brother Kelly, a few others. Let me see, Jennifer. So I just wanted to shout everybody out, and for you all that's watching at home via StreamYard or Zoom, we thank you. So on behalf of the Teaching Artists Institute of Umoja, of course, and today is Umoja. All right, and that's the part of the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba. And I want to take a little quick, I want to mention, since no one has gone over all of the principles of Kwanzaa, and the US organization, Dr. Malenga Karenga, he founded in 1966, and several of the other principles. The second one is Kuji Cha Galea. Yes, I'll move that for a second. Oops. Kuji Cha Galea, which is self-determination. Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. Ujama, which is collective economics. Nia, which is purpose. Kumba, which is creativity. And Imani, which means faith. And I'll take this back. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to go over the 4 principles. We do have people at home that may not be watching for the first time. Interesting. I was at a Kwanzaa earlier, and a brother had his children present, and this was their first time. So we had to go step by step in terms of understanding that people are still coming into the Kwanzaa principles. And so with that being said, of course, we know that how Kwanzaa was established for us to implement these principles, not just on, from the day after Christmas to the New Year, but on a 365-day a year cycle. So that takes a level of financial maturity and understanding that, we were brought to America to be commodities. Now, we have to understand, for instance, what is our power. Ultimately, all of these principles have to align with us raising up and overcoming and developing power. And that's the conversation that all organizations, all individuals must have ultimately, because without power, there can be no liberation. And so with that being said, of course, we have to understand, the global diaspora and African movement, of course. There are many African people all throughout the world that we have to continue to align with. But ultimately, as the brother said, I want to thank him for joining us, speaking about the history of Liberia and what we must align ourselves with that history. I did meet the ambassador of Liberia perhaps 3 or 4 months ago. So, a young brother in the Maryland area. And so I appreciate meeting him. But we have to understand, for instance, for those of us that are in the United States of America, we have certain abilities, certain talents, and certain networks, or shall I say, access to use our creativity, of course, to create opportunities for Africans at home. And so this is why Kwanzaa principles are so relevant and important to this day. And so we at the Teaching Artists Institute this year, we did go to Tanzania and of course South Africa, and we hope to follow back up next year with that, and we would encourage those of us that have a will to participate or encourage or share others that collectivism to join us, of course, and understand that we needed to create these connections because ultimately, I just saw a statement. It was I'm paraphrasing, but it was in relation to how Jewish people perceive the state of Israel, and how many, for instance, many Black people in America do not feel the necessity to have that connection. And it's by design, it's by social engineering, the deep level of self-hatred, the miseducation, as well as the anti-African propaganda has created a level of ignorance within our community to it's almost like we try to run away from those areas, those intellectual, what's the term? The intellectual warfare studies to understand what is actual power within this society. I'm quoting Jacob Carruthers, if I may. That's his book, Intellectual Warfare, how we have been miseducated to minimize our role as African people throughout the world and accept a subservient position within the world. And so, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Of course, my name is Hakeem. Follow me on various social medias, Great Consciousness and Capital. But of course, you can go to our Teaching Artists page on Facebook, of course, and we're updating our website, taitours.org. So check that out. I think we're up with that. So shout out to all the ambassadors as well as our TAI elders. We had our TAI elders retreat this weekend. So we're very grateful for the partners and collaborations of many of our elders. And so without further ado, I'd like to bring our elder back on, Baba Rufus T. Stevens, to share a little bit more with you. He was here earlier. So let's welcome back with a strong Harambe. All right. Harambe. All right.
Morgan family. My name is Baba Rufus Chafing Stevenson. I come from a little small country town in Georgia called Noonan, down the railroad tracks. I am a Pan-African cultural evangelist. I was the first Morehouse College graduate to join and serve in the Peace Corps in West Africa, served in Vietnam as an MP, and served as a diplomat in the State Department in Africa, East, West Africa, and in London. My experience have taught me many things. In addition to being a Pan-African cultural evangelist, I am one of the founding elders of the Teaching Artists Institute. And the mission of and vision of the Teaching Artists Institute is for the artists to use their creative talent to nurture and promote the cultural spirit of our people. Over the years, I have been a Pan-African cultural evangelist. I have a 501c3 nonprofit called TAI Kwanzaa International. And among the different services we render to the community is one that I stress and I have behind me called the 7 Voices of Africa, starting with number 1 all the way to number 7, starting with the lotus flower here, all the way ending up with the lotus flower there. With this nonprofit, one of the major things that I do is I take colorful hand-woven traditional African textiles, and I dress them that I take. I bring the African spirit. I must say that catch you up on what I've done recently. In 1997, Kwanzaa became an official postage stamp. And in Washington, D.C., that officiality was sponsored, was presented on the Millennium stage at the Kennedy Center. And the founder of the Dance Institute of Washington, Fabian Barnes, who's passed now, he chose me to dress the Millennium stage with my African textiles. And it was so popular during that first presentation in 1997 until for the next 10 years, the Kennedy Center gave us the grand concert hall stage to decorate. So for 11 years, we did the Spirit of Kwanzaa. Last weekend, this year was my 24th year decorating the Spirit of Kwanzaa for the Dance Institute of Washington. Last year, did not decorate the stage because of the pandemic. But this year, we decorated it. And the focus of that decoration at the Dance Institute of Washington was the 7 Voices. Briefly, I want to talk about the 7 Voices. In 2011, that was when I met the founder of the Teaching Artists Institute. And we were part of the excavation team of Tony Browder in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, excavating the tomb of Karakamun, who was a priest at the temple of Karaka, 750 years before the birth of Christ. During that time, excavating that tomb, 5 voices were revealed to me. And from that, I chose textiles to represent each one of those voices. In 2016, I gave a presentation in Ethiopia, and during that presentation at the 3rd International Conference on Ethiopia, its historical, biblical, and cultural roots, 2 new voices were given to me. Now, since that time now, since 2011 and up to now, there are 7 voices that I use to decorate church sanctuaries, theater backdrops, exhibitions, etc. Now, briefly, I'll tell you about the 7 voices, and if you wish to get a copy of it, you may contact the Teaching Artists Institute, or you may send an email to jakinti@aol.com. The first voice, I would say here, is the lotus. And the lotus flower represents, first I would say that black land called Egypt was known as Kemet before it was conquered by the Greeks. Prior to the Greeks, it had been conquered by the Syrians and the Persians. But in 332 years before the birth of Christ, the Greeks came and conquered that black land called Kemet and changed the name to Egypt. That's how we got Egypt. And that lotus flower here represents that first voice. That was before the birth of Christ. During the birth of Christ, I wondered exactly after that first voice was revealed to me, it came to me in terms of what happened to that black land after that. And we realized that in the Bible, all of Africa, I think Ethiopia was the first country named in the Bible, all of Africa was known as Ethiopia. So the second voice was Ethiopia. And that is Ethiopian color of the flag there, the second one. And then in 1957, the first independent country that got its independence was Ghana in 1957. Of course, we know Liberia and Ethiopia, they were never colonized, but Ghana in 1957 was independent. And because that was a major thing, that was the for cloth, as you see here. And 6 years later, Ghana, it was Nkrumah, Secretary in Guinea, and Modibo Keita in Mali, they met with Haile Selassie in Ethiopia, and they founded the OAU, so that when all the African countries became independent, they would all join the OAU, and it would be one voice. And that fourth voice was represented with the white country cloth from Guinea, the white here. That was in 1963. Now, in 2002, when Gaddafi was the president of the OAU in South Africa, they changed the name from the OAU to the AU, and as a result, you have the fifth voice, which is the Coast of Kwanzaa. And in 2012, the African presidents got together in their annual meetings, and the president of Senegal, Abdoulaye Wade, suggested symbolically that since Africa had 5 voices, North, South, East, West, Central, that the African Union recognized all Africans living outside of Africa as the 6th voice. And I wondered exactly, now, what could represent that 6th voice? And finally, thinking about Bob Marley and reggae and whatnot, I thought about the color of gold. And I thought about the gold that was stolen, so that represented that. But now in 2012, it dawned on me that, well, what that 6th voice, where the 7th voice would be. And it dawned on me that it come together in a government called the AU, the African Union, and the African Union has symbolically recognized all Africans outside of Africa. It was time for the African family and the diaspora family to come together. And I decided that I would utilize the lotus flower that started the whole thing off when Africa's name was changed. Egypt's name was changed from Kemet to Egypt. I thought it was time that I would go back in the spirit of Sankofa, and fetch Christian spirituality that guarded the lives of our ancestors during the known golden ages. And that was during the time of Kemet. Before then, we know it was the Nile Valley civilization. So in essence, now we have 7 voices now, starting with Kemet and ending up with Kemet. So it's time for us to come together now, reach back and fetch it. Forget about the different religions now that you are members of. Now reach back and fetch that spirituality called Ma'at, M-A-A-T. And Ma'at consists of 7 universal principles: truth, justice, righteousness, balance, order, harmony, and reciprocity. And these 7 universal principles serve as a foundation for all known religions. So we as African people, we can forget about all the different religions that we are members of right now, come together now on that one thing that we all have in common, that is the spirituality of our ancestors. And those 7 universal principles are embedded in our African black and brown melanated skin. And I thank you very much. Oh, I want to do one point. I want to do Langston Hughes' poem, Final Call. Send for the Pied Piper and let him wipe our wrath away. Send for Robin Hood to clinch the anti-poverty campaign. Send for the fairy queen with the wave of the wand to make us all into princes and princesses. Send for King Arthur to bring the Holy Grail. Send for old man Moses to lay down the law. Send for Jesus to preach the Sermon on the Mount. Send for Dreyfus to cry, J'accuse. Send for dead blind Lemon to sing the B-flat blues. Send for Robespierre to scream, Sire, Sire, Sire. Send, God forbid, he's not dead long enough for the Momo to cry, freedom now. Send for Lafayette and tell him, help, help me. Send for Denmark Vesey crying, free. For Saint saying, run a new flag of the mask. Send for old Uncle Tom on his bending knees. Send for Lenin. Don't you dare. He can't come here. Send for Trotsky. What? Don't confuse the issue, please. Send for Uncle Tom on his bending knees. Send for Lincoln. Send for Grant. Send for Frederick Douglass, Garrison, Bishop, Lowell. Send for Harriet Tubman. Oh, Sir Jonah Truth. Send for Marcus Garvey. What? Sophie. Who? Father Divine. Wow. Malcolm. Oh. Send for Stokely. No. Send for Adam Powell on a non-subpoena day.
A non-subpoena day.
Send for the Pied Piper and have him to wipe our rats away. And if nobody comes, send for me. Thank you.
Say.
What is Africa to me? Scarlet sun, ocean sea, jungle bronze, oh jungle tribe, woman from whose lawns I sprang. Oh, even black. Family, I just want to thank you so much for being with us on this good Umoja day. Kwanzaa is 365. I encourage you to celebrate Kujichagulia, Ujima, Ujamaa, Nia, Kuumba, and of course of all, Imani, the faith that we need to still believe in each other, to still believe that we have the capacity to build what we need for our sustainability. I want my family to come off of the camera. I think I see Aunt Marsha, of course, my mama, Jackie. I do this for y'all. This is for y'all. Are y'all there? I see Miss Mickey. Yes, come on off the camera, family. Let me make sure that I pull it up. Where did I put my phone? You have my phone?
Yeah, hold up.
You sound on it?
I try to
reduce yes, come on. Yes, there they are. Yay! Thank you, family. I appreciate that so much. You guys don't know what it means. We do again.
Mickey got a whole tribe over there.
Artists Institute. We do events all over the world in 7 countries. Many of the artists that are even in the room today, Mama Ade, Abatiola, they leave tomorrow to Benin. They will continue to do this work. But if we do this work and we don't bring our families along for the journey, yes, I know that they tell you when you start understanding your connection to Africa that you will develop a new family. But the family of your enculturation, the one that helped you become who you are, never stop exposing them to this worldview. Never stop encouraging them to come with you on this journey. We need us. You are the light in your crew. You are the light in your tribe and your family of enculturation. And Kwanzaa is a tool. Kwanzaa is a tool to help you begin having that conversation of re-Africanization for your family, whatever that means for your sustainability. Ultimately, as the quintessential human beings, that's what African people are. It is your job to bring about and manifest the standard, the moral standard, the code of ethics for all of humanity. And Kwanzaa is our chance to realign under those principles. Thank you again, family. We appreciate you guys being with us tonight, and we will see you next time.
I see. Harambe. Harambe. You
Oh,
ended.
that was a long meeting.
Oh, God. You ain't
Yes,
get a Harambe.
I'm so
Okay.
sorry it wasn't in person, but we had to still do something.
Oh, you look that fabric. Oh, you wear it.